In order to celebrate the 450th anniversary, we decided that the best way of doing that was to have an exhibition of the company, its history and its craft, both in the past, but also talking about what the company does today. The Worshipful Company of Joiners and Ceilers has a very long history, and we date back to well before the 15th century. In fact, the earliest written records of the company were 1400. But the most significant date for the Worshipful Company was when it was created as a Worshipful Company, and that was in 1571 when we were granted a royal charter by Queen Elizabeth I. And that was important because the royal charter established the company as a company, one that is able to own land and enter into contracts and all that sort of thing. One of the great treasures of the Worshipful Company of Joiners and Ceilers is a very fine painting that used to hang in the courtroom, actually above the fireplace of the old hall when Joiners Hall was in existence. And it's a fine oil painting that was painted towards the end of the 17th century and depicts the Court of Assistants, which is the executive committee of the company, looking at the plans for their new hall. The Joiners Hall was burnt down during the Great Fire of London, and so this painting sort of commemorates the planning that went into building the new hall. We do not know who painted it, but nevertheless it is a 17th century painting, and it's one that connects us as liverymen today to the liverymen of yesterday, and that makes it special for all of us. The Worshipful Company of Joiners and Ceilers is one of the ancient livery companies of the City of London. The ancient livery companies were originally trade guilds, and they controlled their trade within the City of London. And that made them very powerful because you couldn't actively practice a trade without being a member of the livery company. And because wood joinery and wood carving was such an important craft and one widely used, the Joiners and Ceilers was a very big company in those days.
Joints in wood evolved for the need for greater complexity in the use of wood. Here we have an example of dovetail joints. In this particular instance, these would have been used and still are used mainly in the furniture industry. A similar joint is also used in construction where added strength is required, just on the corner of a roof construction. Here we have 6 examples of timber, which is probably most commonly used today in joinery: European oak, ash, Caribbean mahogany, which is actually called Honduras mahogany, and Iroko, which is an African wood. This display provides a good example of the wide range of tools used for joinery and carving. These 2 saws are American Diston. They were probably made at the turn of the 20th century, very much in demand when they were made, and even today joiners love to get their hands on them. This is a plane, an English-made plane by Norris, late 19th century. Here we have some carving tools, and it's interesting, this one is a more up-to-date one, and it's Swiss-made, but very popular amongst the carving profession. These are 2 fine examples of modern-day wood carving by Tony Webb, who is a master carver. They were made for St Paul's Cathedral, and they are copies of some of Grindon Gibbon's work. These are 2 fine examples which demonstrate that the carving skills still exist today.
The most magnificent wall comprises 2 masters' chairs, made 267 years apart.
The original master's chair was made by a gentleman who was a master of our company, Edward Newman, circa 1750, and the style is very much along the lines of Chippendale.
The exhibition also features a minute book from the company's archives. There's an entry from 1755 which shows a Mr. Edward Newman, who was a master of the company, being paid £27.06 for a magnificent chair. The chair is in the exhibition. It's the first time that these two objects have been brought together. At £27.06, that's about £6,000 today. That's a bargain when you look at the chair with its ornate Gothic arches.
This year, in our anniversary, we commissioned to have a new chair made. The design was developed by several of the liverymen, and the woods chosen are mainly English, and in particular there is some bog oak which was found in the fens fairly recently, and that's been laying there for thousands of years.
There's also a section which celebrates some of the things that have been made today by joiners and woodcarvers, including part of a staircase, a small wooden window, a small door made by students, and a recorder. Instruments are also made by woodcarvers. Perhaps that's not something that's widely known by people.
The Worshipful Company of Joiners and Ceilers is as important today as it was back in the 16th, 15th, 14th century, because the skill of wood joinery and wood carving is just as relevant today as it was all those years ago. And the company maintains the craft standards particularly and ensures excellence in the craft. And we promote the craft and encourage young people to take up the craft and to carry those great skills forward from generation to generation. And we've done that for 600 years, and we will be continuing to do that in the future.